BHP set to buy Oz Minerals for $9.6 billion, creating a major copper and nickel producer in Australia. An internal review of the Liberal Party's poor showing in the May election says it is no longer fit for purpose. And Justin Bieber gets upset about how retailers use his image. It's Friday, the 23rd of December, 2022. Welcome to Fear and Greed, Australia's most popular business podcast. I'm Michael Thompson, and good morning, Sean Aylmer.
Good morning, Michael. Looking forward to the weekend. Can't wait for Sunday.
Yes, Christmas. For a second there, I was like, what's happening on Sunday? Like,
oh, dear, you've got young kids too. Surely you know about that.
Oh, it's just at that time of year where just everything is just kind of running together at the moment. So I do kind of beg your pardon for not kind of following where you're at right then. But actually, it's worth mentioning that because it is Christmas, from Monday for a couple of weeks, we go to slightly shorter episodes. There'll still be an episode of Fear and Greed every day, but just a little bit shorter to kind of reflect the fact that it is the festive season.
That's exactly right.
So make sure you're still following the podcast because you will still hear me and Sean every single day. I don't know whether that's necessarily a good thing, Sean.
When you're on holidays, when you're at work, when you're just at home with the kids, just put us on. You get to hear these voices every day. Not Sundays, actually, but every other day you will.
Yeah. I mean, you could save the Saturday show and listen to it on Sunday if you want to hear us on Sunday.
Or repeat it.
Yeah, absolutely. Great idea. We are full of good ideas today,
We
Sean.
are.
And speaking of full of good ideas, Will Buckley, Xero's country manager in Australia, is your interview guest today. He is full of good ideas.
He is full of good ideas. You know what I like about it for our last interview of the year, which it is? It's all about small business. And so much of what Fear and Greed talks about every day is either about businesses and small businesses or investing. And so it's great to finish with someone who's an expert in how small businesses are faring in the Australian economy, how they've done in 2022, and, you know, kind of what's worrying them. And, of course, Xero has so much data on that. It's a great chat.
Yeah, and to go from small business to the biggest business of them all, Sean, the main story this morning, BHP. Nice. Very smooth segue, wasn't it?
Yeah.
BHP is going to buy copper and nickel group Oz Minerals in a $9.6 billion takeover play after the two companies signed a scheme implementation deed yesterday morning.
Yes, this was the deed that needed to be signed before we could say this deal was going to happen. The Oz Minerals acquisition will give BHP the scale considered vital to the future of its underperforming Olympic Dam copper operations in South Australia and could provide a much needed boost for the Nickel West division in Western Australia. Now, two of Oz Minerals' major mines are on either side of Olympic Dam, so it makes sense that BHP gets those sites. Oz Minerals shareholders will vote on the deal at a scheme meeting scheduled for late March or early April next year. The agreed price of $28.25 a share is a 13% premium to BHP's initial offer. It values Oz Minerals at $9.6 billion on an enterprise valuation basis and is nearly 50% higher than Oz's last close back in August before the initial bid was made. Sounds like the board of Oz Minerals have done a pretty good deal for shareholders. The deal will need regulatory approvals from Brazil and Vietnam. BHP plans to use its cash reserves to fund the deal. Nice to have that much cash in reserve just to fund a $9.6 billion deal. Michael?
Yeah, sure is.
BHP and Oz have negotiated a reciprocal break fee, meaning either party that wants to walk away will have to pay about $95 million to the other. So, hence, the deal is almost done. Oz Minerals Managing Director and Chief Executive Officer Andrew Cole said the BHP offer was a compelling premium. He noted BHP had made it as a best and final offer in absence of a competing proposal. The deal is almost done.
All right, big story there right before Christmas. How about local markets? What else happened yesterday?
Well, the S&P ASX 200 closed up 0.5% to 7,152 points. Utilities, technology and healthcare companies did best, while the materials sector was the only one to end the day lower. Things are certainly slowing down in the market in the run into Christmas. Among the large caps, Wesfarmers was the best performer yesterday at 1.3%, while CSL finished 1.1% higher and National Australia Bank closed up 1%. Gold Digger Newcrest Mining was the worst of the large caps, down 1.3%. Best on the day was online property group Domain Holdings, up 5.5%. Now, I'm sure, Michael, that's all about our interview with Domain CEO Jason Pellegrino, which we aired yesterday morning. We aired the interview. Suddenly, the share price is up 5.5%.
I'm sure that is the only reason, Sean.
Yeah, we are taking full credit for it. Well, Jason should because he spoke so well. Well worth a listen. Though, let's be honest, it's probably got nothing to do with it. However,
we'll take it.
Yeah, we'll take it. Yeah. Worst on the day was Silver Lake Resources, which closed down nearly 4%. Now, if you look at the last year or so, some of the better performing large caps have been Woodside Energy, Santos, the big energy companies, BHP and Rio Tinto, iron ore miners, and QBE, an insurer. Certainly, we've had a few investor experts in recent weeks talking about insurers and particularly QBE. Anyway, it's had a pretty good year. Westpac has been the best of the banks, while Wesfarmers, Goodman Group, the industrial property outfit, and gaming machine manufacturer Aristocrat Leisure have been among the worst of the large caps.
All right. International markets, what's happening there?
Oil prices have been rising the past few sessions. Brent's trading around $83 a barrel. Not good for all of those people about to jump on long car trips around the country. Gold remains strong at $18.20 an ounce. Coal prices look like ending the year about 12% below their peak in September, but they're still more than double where they started the year. And the Aussie dollar is trading around 67 and a half US cents.
All right, there is still a bit going on. We'll be back in a moment with the rest of the day's business news. Sean, an official post-mortem of the federal election has warned that the Liberal Party is no longer fit for purpose and that it has presided over the collapse of its volunteer base.
And that left it incapable of defending key seats against Teal independents in the May election. Party membership levels have also hit crisis point. The review released yesterday also reinforces findings of the ALP post-election review that former Prime Minister Scott Morrison's unpopularity was a very decisive factor in the election loss, and voters like Anthony Albanese more. Basically, they thought he was safe. The Libs lost control of its brand in the political debate, allowing Labor to frame the contest, the report says. It is highly critical in its assessment of the party's separate state divisions, which were riddled with factional infighting and personality cults, and blames them for a grassroots failure and neglect of community networks. There's a lot of blame going around among the Libs at the moment.
Yeah, certainly is. Now, Foreign Minister Penny Wong and her counterpart in Beijing, Wang Yi, have agreed to expand high-level dialogue, including to trade ministers, which is interesting, Sean. And the Chinese leader Xi Jinping said he wanted to advance relations between the two countries.
That's right. President Xi exchanged congratulatory messages with Prime Minister Anthony Albanese on the 50th anniversary of diplomatic ties, and he was quoted in the Chinese media as saying, "I attach great importance to the development of China-Australia relations." And that's a step in the right direction towards ending sanctions on about $20 billion worth of exports. Senator Wong, after the meeting with her counterpart, said there was a discussion about opportunities for further dialogue to work through how the two countries can do what's in their best interests and the interest of consumers in both countries, particularly with respect to Australian exports. The near 2-hour meeting between the foreign ministers was the first official meeting in 3 years. Senator Wong said she also raised the issue of the detention of 2 Australian journalists.
On a related kind of theme, Sean, foreign ministers from 12 countries, including Australia, have released a joint statement condemning the Taliban's decision to ban women from universities.
That's right. The statement is backed by the US, United Kingdom, Canada, France, Germany, Japan, Italy, Norway, Spain, Switzerland, the Netherlands, as well as the EU's representative. It criticises the Taliban's relentless and systemic oppression of Afghan women and girls since regaining power through edicts to remove women from workplaces, restrict their movement, require head-to-toe coverings and ban them from public spaces like parks and gyms. The statement says the policies make clear the Taliban's disregard for the human rights and fundamental freedom of the people of Afghanistan.
Yeah, it's a pretty worrying development, isn't it? Now, the federal government's energy deal, which included price caps on coal and gas, needed the New South Wales state government to pass legislation, and that's been done.
Yes, and State Treasurer Matt Keane was promoting the deal hard yesterday. He said the cap had been put in place for 18 months, after which it would be reviewed, and the government's preference will be to remove it. But he did concede there's a risk it will stay if, for example, the war in Ukraine continues.
And still on that subject, Sean, a $1 billion gas project that had interest from customers wanting more than 5 times the volume of gas initially on offer is on hold because of the government's restrictions.
The stalling of Senex Energy's $1 billion Atlas gas project in Queensland is the most serious sign yet of fallout from the government changes. According to the Financial Review, owners of the project, including billionaire Gina Rinehart, declared that the government's intervention in the gas market made it impossible to sign up new contracts. It comes as chief executives across the industry, including the outspoken Santos boss Kevin Gallagher and Woodside Energy's Meg O'Neill, have blasted the Labor government's move to impose ongoing controls on prices.
Sean, Australians are still staying away from elective surgery and extras like optical and dental procedures, according to Medibank.
Yes, that's caused the health insurer to increase the amount of pandemic savings it's returning to customers by $207 million. That takes the total amount this year that it said it will give back to customers to $950 million. So customers with extra-only policies will receive $151, and for those with combined hospitals and extra cover, they'll receive $667. Nice little Christmas present. Medibank said it's funding the give back from additional COVID-19 permanent net claim savings.
And finally, Sean, the weed at the centre of the recall of baby spinach has been identified. It's called thornapple, and it's the cause of 160 people falling ill.
Yes, it's also known as Jimson weed and is very common along the East Coast. It's a type of nightshade that can cause symptoms including dilated pupils, breathing problems, and hallucinations, and that's exactly what we saw.
It's interesting, Sean. It's one of those ones that has a bunch of different names. It's also called Devil's Snare and Devil's Trumpet and a bunch of other things.
Yeah, I think it's like Brazilian nightshade in other places. It's got the Brazilian word in front.
Might leave that one alone there, shall I? Let's move on to overseas news, shall we? Now, President Joe Biden met Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky in a historical moment, which really strengthens the ties between the two countries.
Yes, President Biden said as much, saying the visit shows Russia that Ukraine and America are united. He said Russian President Vladimir Putin had failed in Ukraine and failed to break NATO. It's the first time the Ukrainian president has left his country since Russia's invasion at the beginning of the year. President Zelensky expressed his thanks to the US for its ongoing support and says the supply of a Patriot battery system will greatly strengthen Ukraine's air defense. He also urged Congress to approve additional financial aid to Ukraine. President Biden at the meeting announced an additional $1.85 billion worth of military assistance.
And finally, Sean, a couple of Christmas stories. The first is about shopping. Singer Justin Bieber has accused retailer H&M of selling clothing depicting him without his consent.
Let me quote what Justin Bieber put on Instagram earlier in the week. The H&M merch they made of me is trash and I didn't approve it. Don't buy it. Clothes in the H&M collection include sweatshirts, T-shirts and hoodies featuring Bieber's likeness, lyrics and branding, according to Bloomberg. Now, the retailer has previously sold Bieber's concert tour merchandise a few times, but going back a few years, that is. But Bieber says the latest merchandise is on sale without his permission. A representative from H&M disagreed and said the company followed proper approval procedures for the collection.
And Sean, the second Christmas story is about new release films, which is not really kind of Christmassy, but it does always happen around Christmas, so we'll allow the link. Walt Disney's Avatar, The Way of Water, has crashed screening equipment in some theatres across Japan because many cinemas aren't actually modern enough to show the sequel.
Yes, the second Avatar film, one of the most expensive productions in Hollywood history, adopts many of the latest visual technologies, including a high frame rate 3D format. And that requires a great deal of information to be processed quickly. It appears that many Japanese cinemas haven't upgraded to allow that to happen. So it just hasn't worked. It hasn't been a good opening for Avatar, the second Avatar. It just hasn't kind of got the reviews that you might want to get. And also, I take exception. I think the day after Christmas is one of the biggest cinema selling days of the year.
Yeah, but that's Boxing Day. That's not Christmas. I'm going to try on a technicality here. If it was about a Christmas movie, if it was about, say, Love Actually getting re-released, because I know that earlier in the week you said that you hated it and therefore hate Christmas and all the joy that it brings, that if it was Love Actually being re-released, then absolutely this would be a Christmas story, but it's not really.
Righto. On with the show.
Well, we're actually at the end, Sean. I just wanted to squeeze in one last sledge before we finished up for the day.
Fantastic.
Up next is the Fear and Greed Daily interview. Will Buckley, Xero's country manager in Australia, is your guest.
Yes, as we mentioned at the top of the show, all about small business and what they're doing. Great interview.
All right, that's coming up next in the Fear and Greed playlist on your podcast platform or at fearandgreed.com.au. Thank you very much, Sean.
Thank you, Michael.
It's Friday, the 22nd of December, 2022. Make sure you're following the podcast. Join us online on LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. We'll be back tomorrow with the weekend edition of Fear and Greed. Then shorter episodes for a couple of weeks. There'll be a new episode of How Do They Afford That out every Wednesday. So make sure you keep following Fear and Greed. I'm Michael Thompson, and that was Fear and Greed. Have a great day.